Good afternoon and welcome back to iProperty Radio Live at the National Construction Summit 2025 here in Blanchardstown. I'm delighted to be joined by Stephen Lennon, Head of Justice and Emergency Services with HLM Architects. Stephen, you have just come off the modern methods of construction stage where you were talking about the kit of parts approach to standardisation and platform interoperability. That sounds very complicated. Let's break it down. First of all, HLM Architects. What's the core of your work?
Morning, Carol. Yeah, so thanks for having me. Yeah, no, we've just come off the stage, and the core of our work, we're probably public sector based. We do a lot in healthcare, justice, defence, housing, and education. So probably the primary part of that will be around government and public sector projects. But in terms of the topic that we're talking about, MMC is an important topic for HLM. MMC is at the core of our business. So all sectors and all projects are assessed at the start for MMC or offsite solutions. So every project's assessed, and then we deliver on. We're agnostic in what way we deliver it, and we just want the right solution for the project. In terms of the topic, we've been asked some time ago to talk about projects, real projects that deliver some of the concepts that have been talked about. So the kit of parts is a concept that people talk a lot about, and we have been delivering projects in the justice sector for about 25 years. Modern methods of construction and offsite construction have been at the core of that for them 25 years. And with the MOJ in the UK, there was a kit of parts developed to deliver a number of prison projects, 3, 4, 5 big, large prisons, 1,600 places, but also some other products like the small secure house blocks and a number of other immigration projects as well, where the same kit of parts could be utilised across a broad array of projects. So that was what we wanted to talk about, and what we talked about today was that kit of parts and how we develop that kit of parts and how that evolves, and what that allows us to do in terms of a repeatable product. There's a number of key parts that, which was, of an informed client, a set of rules, a pipeline of work, and all of that produced within a set of standards, a product that could be repeated across a number of sites. So that was what the kit of parts, the standardization was about. And the interoperability part was about how these parts could be used on different buildings, different projects, but also the interoperability of the supply chain. So the idea that a number of suppliers could supply the products for this, so it didn't sit with one supplier. So that was the gist of what we were talking about today.
I think it's really interesting looking at this from the offsite and modern methods of construction side of things, because actually there's almost a misconception that this is a very new concept, whereas actually you're one of the people who've spoken to me on previous occasions also that this is not a very new concept at all. In fact, you come from your father was in the trade, and
Yes.
He was involved in delivering modular homes back in the 1970s.
Yeah, I did an interesting realization last year. We were invited to an opening of the VBC, the Volumetric Building Company in Monaghan.
Yeah.
And what I
who are also exhibiting here today. Shout out to BBC.
Yeah. And what I came to realize was it was on the site of the old, I think it was the Irish Joinery Manufacturers Company, and in the very early 70s, my father's a building contractor, and he was building timber frame homes at that time for Irish Joinery Manufacturers. And the first home I lived in was actually an Irish Joinery Manufacturers home, still there 52 years later, so it is. But so it was interesting just to make that realization that, this is an evolution. In construction, nothing's new, but it's always an evolution. So modern methods of construction are tried and tested, and I think that's also proven in our work in the justice sector. We've been delivering for the last 25 years off-site solutions, and we couldn't build modern new prisons, and we've built them all over the world, but you couldn't build them on site. You have to build them off-site, deliver, assemble, and then occupy. So that's the only way to do it, particularly because of the number and size and scale of the project, and the small nature of the sites that you're developing.
I would love maybe at a later date to have a more in-depth conversation with you, not just around the kit of parts approach to standardization, but the issue of interoperability, because you talk about the evolution of this sector, but that means we need the supply chain to evolve along with it. And I think that's probably part of a larger conversation that I definitely want to have with you. But today we're here at the National Construction Summit, and I'm conscious that part of your title, as well as Head of Justice, is that you're Head of Emergency Services. And one of my biggest points of frustration, everything we're talking about in construction today is almost putting the burden back on the construction industry. Can the construction industry rise up to the challenge to deliver the housing, the healthcare, the education, the critical infrastructure that Ireland needs? And I have never not believed in the ability and the capacity of Ireland's construction industry to deliver. What I utterly am at a loss about is the ecosystem and the mechanisms that the state have put in place that should be facilitating the delivery and is not, is actually, has the policies have had the opposite effect of delivering. And so actually something that has not been borne out is that we've actually come through a number of what might be considered emergency situations in terms of COVID and even Brexit to a certain extent, and obviously the war in Ukraine that had such a huge impact at that time. But I'm particularly thinking about COVID. We talk about Ireland being a crisis, but we obviously don't believe we have a housing crisis in Ireland, because if we did, we would respond to it the same way we responded to the COVID-19 crisis. Is that a fair assessment? Am I missing something?
No, I think it's fair in the sense that I think we as a construction industry would say that we have tools and skills and experience to deliver. I think that what there is there's many levers to be pulled in delivering and solving the housing crisis, whether that be policy, government, funding, land. There's 5 or 6 elements there that all have to align before you get a project to work. And the government they're doing some work around housing and standardisation. The Planning Act's changing. We're going to see how that's going to work. But things like land in the right place, access to utilities. Utilities can be a big part in terms of sites viable or not, and then how that relates in terms of the wider sustainability of where these locations are and how they service the towns or the cities that people are going to live in. So I think there's a lot of levers to pull. I think the construction industry, we would like to say that we are well tooled and ready, able to assist with that. But some of the things you mentioned are universal and not just unique to Ireland. I think UK will be experiencing similar things. So I think there has to be a way of looking at how do you fast track these projects? How do you make it an emergency, like you said, the COVID emergency, and how do you prioritise that, and what is it that would move that forward? So that's an important part, and probably for me the first point is probably availability of land. Once you have the land, if it's in the right place, if it's good services, and it's connected to the infrastructure, including transport, that's the first building block ready to move forward.
Given your perspective from an international architecture practice that is well versed in operating and again rising to emergency situations, can you point to an example of where this has been done well? Are there international examples that Ireland could actually look at or learn from? Not necessarily from housing, across disciplines.
Yeah. I think sometimes in these emergency situations, you can look to sort of government policy and government commitments to deliver. There was things in the past, even in Northern Ireland, there's a board called the SIB, the Strategic Investment Board, which was looking at trying to push a way through the red tape. And so I think things that got their agencies may be able to, sometimes you can get another layer of bureaucracy, which you have to be careful about, but sometimes you can get an agency that's there to deliver and that can help move through these roadblocks.
Well, look, as I mentioned, we're streaming live from the iProperty Radio studio at the National Construction Summit here in Blanchardstown today, and it's today and tomorrow, so there's still time to get involved, register to attend and pop down to join us and almost 4,000 delegates kind of walking through the area. As I mentioned, Stephen, you've done your part, you're off stage. So for the rest of the day, there are more than, I think, 200 stands around here. There's so many examples of innovation. There's lots of new things that I've never seen before. What is catching your attention, or what's your plan for the afternoon? Where are you making a beeline to?
Yeah, well, obviously, when a minister speaks, you have to go to see that. So that's very important. So I think there's 2 ministers speaking today. But also some of the new technologies that we're seeing here. There's certainly some stuff around surveying that I've seen that's really interesting. These sort of robot dogs that go out and do surveying. So there's a lot of new technology that I want to kind of pick up on and see how they would benefit our projects and our clients.
Very good. And just finally, what can we expect to see from HLM Architects for the rest of 2025?
2025. Well, I think we'll continue to deliver in the MMC world. I think for HLM, what we're interested in is making a difference to people's lives. So at the core of our architecture is always making a difference to people's lives, understanding what people's needs are and delivering solutions that allow them to flourish.
Lovely. Delighted to hear it. Stephen, I'm so delighted that you walked past our studio today and we were able to nab you in. Well done on your presentation this morning, and go out and enjoy the 200 plus exhibition stands here. There's so much to see and do here. So I hope you find out lots that you can take back to your team. Thank you so much for being with us today. That was Stephen Lennon, Head of Justice and Emergency Services at HLM Architects. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Carol.